I spent the week in this haze of decompression, feeling almost stunned with a mixture of exhaustion and stillness. I sat in cafes and talked to strangers. I wandered around the Provincetown Library and street bookstores, picking out yet more books I was going to read. I ate enough lobsters that if that species ever evolves consciousness, I will be remembered as their stalin figure, destroying them on an industrial scale. I walked all the way out to the spot where the pilgrims first arrived on American soil 400 years before. They wandered around, couldn't find much, and sailed further down, landing on Plymouth Rock. Strange things started to bubble up into my consciousness. I kept hearing in my head the opening lines of songs from the 1980s and 1990s when I was a kid, ones I hadn't thought about for years. Cat Among the Pigeons by Bros, or The Day We Caught the Train by Ocean Color Scene. Without Spotify, I had no way to listen to the songs in full, so I sang them to myself as I walked down the beach. Every few hours, I would feel an unfamiliar sensation gargling inside me, and I would ask myself, what is that? Ah, yes, calm. But all you've done is leave two lumps of metal behind. Why does this feel so different? It felt like I had spent years holding two screaming, clucky babies, and now the babies had been handed over to a babysitter, and their screaming and vomiting had vanished from view. Everything slowed down for me. Normally, I followed the news every hour or so, getting a constant drip feed of anxiety provoking factories and trying to smush it together into some kind of sense. In Provincetown, I could no longer do this. Every morning, I would buy three newspapers and sit down to read them. And then I wouldn't know what happened in the news until the next day. Instead, instead of constant blasts running all through my waking life, I got one in depth, curated guide to what happened, and then I could turn my attention to other things. One day, not long after I arrived, a gunman went into a newspaper office in Maryland and murdered five journalists. As a journalist myself, that's obviously close to my heart, and in my normal life, I would have received texts from my friends as soon as it happened, and then followed it for hours on social medias, absorbing garbled accounts, gradually assembling a picture. In Provincetown, the day after the massacre, I knew within 10 minutes all the clear, tragic details I needed to know from a dead tree. Suddenly, physical newspapers, the very thing this gunman had targeted, seemed to me like an extraordinarily modern invention, and one we all needed. My normal mode of consuming news, I realized, induced panic. This new style induced perspective. I felt like something was happening in the first week that was slowly opening my receptors a little, to more attention, to more connection. But what was it? I only began to understand those first 2 weeks in Provincetown, and why I felt the way I did. Later, when I went to Copenhagen, Sune Lehmann's sons jumped into his bed, and he knew, with a lurch in his gut, that there was something wrong. Every morning, his two boys would leap all over him and his wife, excitedly shrieking, glad to be awake for another day. It's the kind of scene you picture longingly when you imagine becoming a parent, and Sune adored his sons. He knew he should be thrilled by their joy at being awake and alive, but each morning, whenever they appeared, he would instinctively stretch out his hand, not for them, but for something colder. I would reach over and grab my phone to check my email, he told me, even though these amazing, wonderful, sweet creatures are crawling around my bed. Every time he thought about it, he felt ashamed. Suna had trained as a physicist, but after a while he figured he was going to have to investigate at the Technical University of Denmark, where he is a professor in the Department of Applied Mathematics and Computer Science. What was happening not just in physics, but in himself? I had been obsessed with how I was losing my own ability to focus, he told me. I was realizing that somehow I was not able to control my own use of the internet. He found himself mindlessly following the small details of events like the US presidential election on social media, hour after hour, achieving nothing. This wasn't just affecting him as a parent, but as a scientist. He says, I came to this realization that my job, in a way, is to think something that is different from everyone else. But I was in an environment where I was just getting all the same information as everyone else, and I was just thinking the same things as everyone else. He had a sense that the deterioration he was experiencing in his focus was happening to a lot of the people around him. But he also knew that at many points in history, people have thought they were experiencing some kind of disastrous social decline, when in fact they were merely aging. It's always tempting to confuse your personal decline for the decline of the human species. Sune, who was in his late 30s at the time, asked himself, am I a grumpy old man, or is the world really changing? So, with scientists across Europe, he launched the largest scientific study yet conducted to answer a key question. Is our collective attention span really shrinking? As a first step, they drew up a list of sources of information that they could analyze. The first and most obvious was Twitter. The site had launched in 2006 and Sune began this work in 2014. So there was 8 years of data to draw on. On Twitter, you can track what topics people are talking about and how long they discuss them for. The team began to do a massive analysis of the data. How long do people talk about a topic on Twitter for? Has the length of time they focus collectively on any one thing changed? Do people talk about the topics that obsess them, the trending hashtags, for more or less time now compared to in the recent past? What they found is that in 2013, a topic would remain in the top 50 most discussed subjects for 17.5 hours. By 2016, that had dropped to 11.9 hours. This suggested that together, on that site, we were focusing on any one thing for ever shorter periods of time. Okay, they thought, that's striking. But maybe this was a quirk of Twitter. So they started to look at a whole range of other data sets. They looked at what people search for on Google. What's the rate of churn in that? They analyzed the movie ticket sales. How long did people carry on going to the cinema to watch a movie after it became a hit? They studied Reddit. How long did topics last there? All the data suggested that as time passed, we were focusing less on any one individual topic. The one exception, intriguingly, was Wikipedia, where the level of attention on topics has held steady. With almost every data set they looked at, the pattern was the same. Sune said, we looked at a lot of different systems, and we see that in every system there is an accelerating trend. It is faster to reach peak popularity, and then there is a faster drop again.